And we're live on Book Chat Live, second time in the day. And today's second guest in the evening UK time, but I think it's still afternoon in the US, is the amazing Catherine Carrigan. Would you describe yourself as a natural healer and a best-selling author, something along those lines?
Yes,
How would you describe yourself, Catherine?
And first of all, thank you so much, Tim Lewis, for having me, and thank you everybody out there for listening. And hopefully, you're going to get a lot out of this show. I always aim to share a lot of information. So I am a medical intuitive healer and author of 10 books and host of the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. And you can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com.
Okay. Well, hopefully they don't like that sort of thing, Amazon, but I'm happy to forget about it. So let's start off with your first book recommendation. And I've rejigged the order of these, and it's going to be Power versus Force, The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior by David.
Now, this is my very favorite book. This is actually not the first copy that I read, but I've read this book so many times I can't even tell you. So Dr. David Hawkins is now deceased. He wrote many books while he was alive. He was a medical doctor, and he was widely known, accepted to be an enlightened person. So at any rate, this is a great book. It will accelerate your spiritual growth and help you understand yourself and other people and what other people are going through. He spent about 20 years writing this book.
So what was what would you say is the major takeaway you had when you read that book then? What was it? Like, what do you remember most? Like, you suddenly thought, oh yeah.
So Dr. Hawkins came up with a scale of consciousness from 0 to 1,000. So 1,000 is the highest frequency that could be held by human. So this would have been like Jesus, Buddha, the truly enlightened ones. Everything that's from 0 to 200 is destructive to life. These are all your negative emotions. And then 310 is willingness. 400 is reason. 500 is love. 600 is enlightenment. So, and you can calibrate the level of consciousness of anyone or anything. So that's kind of a nutshell. And he describes in great detail what all that means in this book.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the next book, which is by a familiar author, Unlimited Intuition Now by Catherine Carrigan.
Okay.
Is this one of your best-selling books, or?
Yes. Thank you. So as a medical intuitive healer, I use my intuition with people all over the world to help them understand what's going on with their health. And many people want to understand their own intuition and how it works. So I wrote this book, Unlimited Intuition Now, and it talks about the 4 primary intuitive gifts: claircognizance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and clairvoyance. And this is my photograph. So I like to use my photos on the book.
So when did you write that book? Was that one of your first books or one of your last books?
That is a really great question. When did I write that book? I have to look that up. When did I publish that? Let's see. 2016 is when this book came out.
Oh, okay. And why did you think that because I know you've got some other unlimited books that you wrote. Why was intuition something that you felt that people needed to grasp as a concept when you wrote that book?
It's my view, not that I'm right, not that I know anything, that you are a soul and your soul is always trying to communicate with you. And if you understand how your soul is communicating with you, then you can be better at anything and everything that you do. So I wanted to write a book explaining how all that worked and how you receive information from your soul.
Okay. Right, we're going on to the next book, which is awful. No, it's not awful. It's also by the amazing Catherine Carrigan, The Little Book of Breathwork, not the Little Work, Little Book of Breathwork.
So this is a book about breathing exercises, hand mudras, and affirmations.
Yeah.
And I have to tell the story about this because it definitely feeds into what we just talked about, which is intuition. Yeah. In 2018, my intuitive guidance insisted that I write a book about breathing. And I thought, who's going to read a book about breathing? Who needs a book about breathing? I argued with myself, but I finished the book in March 2019. What happened March 2020? The world went into lockdown with pandemic. And I gave this book away for free to people in 17 different countries. So many people know about breathing, but this integrates hand mudras, which are hand gestures that you can do that shift your energy, as well as affirmations. And there's a little technique in here, a sequence that I call 8 minutes to inner peace, that will cut anxiety in half in about 8 minutes. So I tell people Xanax doesn't work as fast as this. So yeah.
Because you are a yoga teacher as well, as part of your large swathe of kind of natural healing and other stuff. So it sounds like this book came from a demand from people wanting to know about how to do breath work and breathing.
Yes. And that kind of thing. Yeah. And another of my photos, a lotus. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful lotus.
Okay, now we're going to switch on to another author now, which is a mini course for life by Gerald Jampolsky, MD, and Diane.
I'll help you. It's a tough last name. Cerrone. It sounds like Rice Cerrone, only Cerrone, and they are husband and wife.
Oh, okay. So what is this book about, and why do you like it?
So many people have heard of A Course in Miracles, which is a quite difficult spiritual book for many people. And Gerald Jampolsky and his wife, Diane Cerrone, in this book, A Mini Course for Life, they synthesized the major principles behind A Course in Miracles. And so it's an easier way of wrapping your head around these very important spiritual principles. And a lot of times we're working on our emotional clearing and so on, but you've got to reach to the spiritual and get a whole new perspective to let go of what's really bothering you. So this is a very powerful little book, but it's easier to wrap your head around than A Course in Miracles.
Yeah. So, let's go on a little segue. We're a little bit ahead of time for one of these interviews. How did you, because you've been doing, not meaning to give away your age or anything, but you've been doing this kind of stuff for a while. How did you first get into the whole spiritual natural healing world? Was that something you grew up with, or was that something you suddenly came into?
Oh, great question. And I am 62. I had the wrinkles and gray hair to prove it. So, in my early 30s, I got sick, and I'd always been the perfect patient, done everything the doctors told me to do. And then I got to the point where the doctors were like, you don't really know what to do to help you get better. So I started working with natural healers, and I was like, wow, this stuff works. I want to do what they do. Yeah. So I, embarked on a serious study of healing work with master healers from all over the world. And so I've done natural healing since I was 34. And and we talked about Dr. Hawkins. Yeah. The first book, Dr. Hawkins endorsed my first book. My very first book was about how to heal depression naturally without drugs. We're going to get to the current, the updated version of that. So at any rate, your spiritual growth and your spiritual outlook is very interconnected with your personal health. So I could speak at length, but on all that. So that's in a nutshell. Yeah.
Funny enough, the first time I met you in person, well, the reason I met you was because of social media. And it just so happens that the next book is a book by a certain Catherine Carrigan person, which is What is Social Media Today? Hashtags, keywords, and you. And then, oh my.
By Catherine. My. Yeah. Okay. And so what happened was my first book came out in 1997. My second book, I had basically 18 years of writer's block. And
Oh,
those of us who are authors, it's like, that's really painful having writer's block. So once I started publishing books, again, I got together with a gentleman who was helping me do all the layouts, Rama John Kogan. And and everybody who's an author needs to learn how to do social media. It's kind of like if you run a business, you need to learn how to do bookkeeping or have somebody who helps you. You have to have some degree of understanding of all that. So Rama and I were teaching social media to other authors. And so I actually published 2 books about social media. This is actually the second one that I
got me all the way
around. Anyway, but it helps people to understand how to do social media in a way that your messages show up and get found and can connect with other people who are talking about the same subjects. And you, Tim, in my opinion, are the master at social media. So,
well, thank you. So did you write these 2 books? I've got the next one here, which hopefully I was rather hoping it would be slightly lower down on the display. Did you write these 2 books before you wrote the other books, or presumably after you wrote some of the other books, or in the middle?
It was sort of in the middle. And so again, my first book was published in 1997. My second book was published, What is Healing, was published in 2012. So the whole book landscape had shifted dramatically since that time. And so I wrote these to help, other people learn how to do, again, connect with their audience in social media. So.
Okay. So what would you say is your number 1 social media tip then to somebody, let's say they're a yoga teacher and they've written a book about yoga mats or something. What would be your number 1 social media tip for them then?
Okay. I know this sounds really silly. You have to do it. It's like, the first step of success is to show up. But, once you're showing up, I was listening to Saturday Night Live, and they were spoofing Instagram. And they said, Instagram, this is my face, this is my body, this is my exotic vacation. Just like if you study marketing, it needs to be about other people, not about yourself.
Yeah.
If you sit there and talk about yourself the whole time, nobody cares. Talk about how you can help people. Talk about subjects that other people are really interested in. And that's how you're going to really connect.
Well, it's funny you were talking about different bodies and different diets, because that's the next book.
The next
by
book.
Caroline, is it Meehan or me?
Mine.
Caroline.
Different bodies, different diets. Now so I've done natural healing now since whatever. I'm 62. You do the math. I've done it since 34. Now, I've had people in my office and they look at my bookshelf and they go, I have every diet book you have and then some.
Yeah.
And, like you, I've run radio shows. I'm running my second radio show. And I remember at one point I got a proposal from an author and it said, when you're 50, you should become a vegetarian and take up running. And I just laughed because the truth is that every body is different. And that's why there are so many body types. And some people say, oh, eat a lot of fat. And other people say, don't eat fat. And other people say, don't eat carbs. And all, it's just, we get bombarded by all this information and it's confusing, and people search their whole lives to try and figure out, how can I be thin naturally without starving and over exercising? Yeah. Well, this book is a brilliant book, Carolyn Mine, and she talks about there's 26 different body types. And anyway, it's a fascinating book. And Dr. David Hawkins, when he was alive, he only endorsed 2 books that I know about. This book, Different Bodies, Different Diets by Carolyn Mine, and then my first book, which was about how to heal depression without drugs. So once I heard that Dr. Hawkins had endorsed this book, I thought I need to read the book.
Yeah.
And I went to study with Dr. Carolyn Mine in person. And this is what actually works.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to be healthy and it's not working, then more than likely you're not eating or move or even exercising according to your body type. So if you over exercise or under exercise or do exercise programs that don't work for you, it's just not going to work, and you're going to be killing yourself for no good reason.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's not a book because I've read and heard about a lot of diet books. I've never heard of that before. So this maybe one I pick up.
Yes, this is an excellent one because you don't have to read about the other types. You just have to figure out what your type is and then do that.
Yeah. So. Okay. Shall we move on to the next book, which is backed by this wonderful Catherine Carrigan author? Thankfully, it's one that doesn't take up 2 lines on the banner.
All right.
The Difference Between Pain and Suffering by Catherine Carrigan.
Now, the reason I wrote this book was that at the time that I wrote this, the #1 cause of death for Americans under the age of 50 was actually drug overdose.
Really?
And unfortunately, I think in the past year, the statistics are over 100,000 people have died of drug overdose. So lots of people are turning to opioids and very, very dangerous drugs because they're in pain. Yeah. So this is a book about how you can get out of pain naturally without drugs. And it describes my approach. It explains what you can do on the physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual level. And it has an appendix in the back with the 41 yoga poses that I use most often to help people get out of pain. Full page photos and full page directions. But it's, again, this is a huge issue. And, of course, the big health story in the past couple of years has been the pandemic. But lots of people who are having trouble coping with the emotional aspects of the pandemic, again, are dying of overdoses. And we need to learn different ways of dealing with our pain and suffering.
Yeah. So where was that in your, when did you write that book then? Was that?
Where did I write? I have to look this up. I don't remember all the.
Well, I mean, it's more the ordering. I'm trying to think in my mind. Was this before or after some of the previous books that you?
So this was 2017. This book.
Okay, so it's moderately recent then.
Yeah, about 4 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Well, shall we move on to the next book, which is also by Catherine Carrigan, called "What Is Healing?"
Yeah. And this is my second book, What is Healing?
Oh.
And as I mentioned, I had this very painful 18-year period of writer's block.
Yeah. And that's the end of it, was it?
Yeah, that's the end of it. And thank God. But I remember when I finished the rough draft of this book, I literally sat down and wept. So it felt so good just to get everything moving again. So like, well, let's go off on a tangent for a bit. Why did you have that long period of writer's block, and what unblocked you, or do you not really know? Okay, well, why did I have the writer's block? I don't know. I wrote a lot of articles during that time. I definitely blogged a lot, but I just couldn't write a book. It was quite difficult. And then a friend of mine here in Atlanta told me about a certain writing coach. And she said, it's right up your alley. It's intuitive writing. And I went to one of his workshops, and I remember the first day I was there, I wrote 6,000 more words than anyone else in the room. Mm-hmm. And I said, when they told me that, I said, do I get a prize or anything? And they said, you get to come back tomorrow at no extra charge.
Yeah. So, well, that's good to know. So it was that coach that unblocked you then in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, in my own writing journey, it was reading. Well, I wasn't really unblocked because I've never actually written a book before. I tried to write a book for years, and then I read this book called Write, Publish, Repeat. And the way it told to write books was something that worked with me, and I could do that. Let's say I haven't written a book since 2018, so maybe I need a writing coach now.
And what was the name of that book again?
Write, Publish, Repeat. It was a book by the people who run the self-publishing podcast, or used to. I don't think it's called the self-publishing podcast anymore.
Yeah. Well, I published 2 books in 2019, but I think the world has gone through such a huge shift, and I think we're all just trying to digest that, you know.
Yeah.
So I think we got to give ourselves a break.
I know. Okay, so let's talk about the next book, which is Unlimited Energy Now by Catherine Carrigan.
Oh, right.
And if anybody's wondering why poor Catherine seems to be a bit bemused in front of every book, it's because I reordered the books in the last minute to sprinkle them around, make them a bit more interesting order.
It's all good.
Yeah.
The number one problem of all my new clients is people are tired.
Yeah.
And I also have to say that 8 of my books are available as audiobooks. So if you don't like to read, you can listen to them. And this book, because I was writing for people who are exhausted, it's very simply written. And you can, if you're too tired to read it, you can listen to it. But it goes over everything you can do on the physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual levels to rebuild your energy. Yeah. And again, most people over the age of 35 are dealing with some degree of adrenal burnout, and that's affecting absolutely every aspect of your health. So everything that I do requires a ton of energy. So this is a good book that will help you regenerate your energy, and because everything you do requires energy.
So what are the main things that, not meaning to give away your special secrets that people can find in the book, but is it diet, or is it lifestyle? Is it breathing, or is it crystals, or like what are the main things that you recommend people do in that book?
Great question. I think the first step is to actually understand what level of adrenal burnout you're in.
Yeah.
Because let's say there's 3 stages of adrenal burnout. If you're in stage 3 of adrenal burnout, if you try and exercise or diet, it's just absolutely not going to work.
Yeah.
And you're just going to make yourself worse. So really, first step is to understand where you're at. Nutrition is absolutely really important, because in yoga, we refer to as we talk about the 5 bodies, the 5 shis. And in yoga, there's a word, anamaya-kosha, which literally translates as the body of food. So we have a phrase, you are what you eat. I happen to like gummy bears, but that's not, fortunately, all I eat. Gummy bears are a small part of my diet, but the body of gummy bears, I'm joking.
Yeah, well, as I was going to say, in the evenings you look like a gummy bear, but like that, you just don't eat it in the rest of the day.
Yeah. So, but it goes over, again, everything that you can do to rebuild your energy. Emotions are a big part of it. If you don't resolve your emotional baggage, you're definitely going to be exhausted. And changing your mindset. You know, a lot of people think they have to overwork in order to be successful.
Yeah.
Right. So at any rate, it goes over everything, and, you know, including things that you can do at the soul level, because you can feed your soul. And I talk about soul medicine. So just like there's herbs that can balance your physical body, when you understand how to nurture your soul, then it lifts your vibration. You're happy, and you have the energy to do what you want to do and what you need to do.
Is that, not meaning to pry into your sales figures, but is that one of your best-selling books? I would guess it probably is. Or?
You know, that is a great question. I don't know, but I suspect that it is, because so many people who come to me, they really need that. And
And your dog.
There's my dog barking.
Yeah, he's got unlimited energy now. It works.
Exactly.
Is it she?
Yes, it's a she.
It's a she dog. I've actually met the she. Well, I presume it's the same dog.
Yes, it is.
Right now, let's go to a different author now.
Yeah.
Which is Conquering Any Disease by Jeff Primack.
And this kind of is again, if you need unlimited energy now, you might also benefit from this book.
Yeah.
In this book, Jeff Primack is a Qigong teacher, actually.
Oh.
But he is, in my opinion, the world's foremost teacher about food healing. So he talks about different foods that you can use to conquer disease in this book. So he'll take, very common diseases such as infertility, talks about what to eat, what not to eat, and so on. So really, really helpful book when you're wanting to improve your health. And I think one thing that the pandemic has done has made everybody more mindful of how your health is.
Well, right? Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm always, by this time, I've done healing work with people all over the world at every stage of coronavirus. They've gotten COVID, they're post-COVID, long COVID, and COVID seems to attack your weakest organ system.
Yeah.
People are always asking me about these weird symptoms that they're getting. Today, I just got somebody asked me about somebody who's lost their balance, a young person. Yeah. So that's affecting their vestibular system. But at any rate, this book will help you to understand a lot more about natural healing.
Okay, I've got another book by the same author. So that's Smoothie Formulas, 120 delicious high cytochemical recipes by Jeff Primack.
Primack, yes. And I apologize, I don't have that book to show. I do own it. But here's a hint. And I know we're here on Amazon, but if you go to Google and you put in Jeff Primack smoothie formulas, you can get the recipes for free. You can't copy and paste it, but you can find the PDF if you Google it. But the recipe.
No, we're not having that. Okay, we need to buy the book.
Buy the book. Buy the book.
Buy the book. Yeah, this is Amazon we're talking about. Don't do any rebellious stuff that Catherine may have.
Yeah, buy the book. It has the photographs, the directions.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they don't know how to make a smoothie, which is harder than it looks. I studied food healing with Jeff Primack, and he said you have to, if you're going to teach this stuff, you have to know how to make a good smoothie, because if you're trying to convince people to drink smoothies and you make a nasty tasting one, people won't do it. Buy the book.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go back to this Catherine Carrigan woman, who happens to be you, and talk about Reading the Soul.
So this is my 10th book. And before I wrote this book, I received guidance that Archangel Michael would help me write this book. I literally wrote this book in a month. Yeah. And you're an author, and all us authors who are out there listening, you know how hard it is to write a book. So I literally received divine guidance to write this book. And at any rate, when I do a medical intuitive reading, I talk about what's happening on the physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies. So this book explains when I am reading the soul, what I find. Yeah. And, our first step is I talk about unconscious, awakening, and conscious. In other words, when you're fully awake, you're aware that you are a soul, and you've connected to your soul purpose, and you're sharing that with the world. And I talk about karma and what that is, and karmas that you may be struggling with. I talk about reasons you were born. I talk about soul wounds, and what I call soul medicine, which is what nurtures the soul. And also in the book are lots of stories about clients that I've worked with, and giving examples of challenges that they were facing at the soul level that affected their health.
Okay. Well, that sounds like, very different in many ways. So, like, you probably just said this, and due to my poor non-smoothie drinking ability at the moment, I forgot. But where was this in your journey? Was this like towards the start of your writing journey, or was this more recent?
This is my 10th book. This is the last book that I published. This book, I finished the rough draft in September of 2019, and I believe it came out in like December of 2019, something like that.
Yeah. So, it's divinely somebody,
inspired.
Some entity inspired you to do it.
Yeah, and I have to say, if you've been to my website, CatherineCarrigan.com, you know I raise orchids, and this is my orchid.
Yeah.
And so in its full glory, that's a Chartreuse Catalia, and that's an actual flower that had 4 amazing blooms on it. So
it seems rather strange now, but now we're going to go on to a book about yoga for osteoporosis.
Yeah.
The Complete Guide by Lauren Fishman, MD, Ellen Saltonstall, MD.
Yes. So many people who are into natural healing are also into yoga. I've taught yoga now for 26 years. At age 62, I still teach yoga 8 times a week. And in my early 50s, I heard about the work of Dr. Fishman, because osteoporosis and osteopenia is a true epidemic in our society. And it's very common among menopausal women over the age of 50 and above really have to watch out for it. But it's also problematic for men. And unfortunately, as Dr. Fishman talks about, if you take the drugs for osteoporosis, the drugs have many unfortunate side effects, and you're not able to take them very long. And once you stop taking them, your bones can deteriorate very, very quickly. So this is a book about how to build your bones naturally. And after reading Dr. Fishman's research, which is readily available, Dr. Fishman is a medical doctor. And I had the great privilege of studying with him early this year. He was amazing. He's just turned 81.
Oh.
And he still does an hour of yoga every day, and not like weenie yoga. I mean, seriously challenging yoga. So this is a book that you can read to learn how to build your bones naturally. And he has a very simple sequence. He says you can do this sequence in 12 minutes. Maybe I'm just too thorough. It takes me an hour to go through it. But if you do these 12 poses at least 4 times a week, the scientific research shows it will reverse osteopenia and osteoporosis. So this is a very well-written book, very highly researched, and gives you an additional way to deal with your bone health. That's super important.
Right. Well, the next book, I think, appears to be about aging in general, which is the Schwartz Being Principle 2, Transition, a Regeneration Program to Prevent and Reverse Accelerated Aging by Diana Schwartz Being. Schwartz Being?
Yes, Dr. Schwartz Being, Dr. Diana Schwartz Being. So I have many certifications. One of them is I am a certified Schwartz Being practitioner. And if you're over the age of 35, or even many people below the age of 35, you go on a diet, you starve yourself, you over-exercise, and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And I remember years ago, I'd have women come in my office and they would literally be crying. And they would show me their food diary, and they weren't eating anything. And they showed me, they're just exercising like crazy. So basically, Dr. Schwartz Being explains the concept of damaged metabolism. And when you have a damaged metabolism, you're breaking down and aging fast. So, and if you have a degenerative disease of aging, such as osteoporosis or diabetes, you have a damaged metabolism. So this is a book that explains and helps you identify how your metabolism is working and what you can do to rebuild your metabolism naturally. And it's a great book. And again, this is the truth.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily becoming a vegetarian and, running an hour a day when you're 50.
Yeah. So that's clearly approved by your dog because it's barking all the time.
I know. Dixie? She tends to be. I have to tell you this funny story because Dixie eats paper, and she is literally. I'm not making this up. She recently ate the rough draft of all my books.
Oh.
And this before I wrote books, Dixie, come here. Before I wrote books, I wrote plays. And this afternoon, I went into my bookshelf, and she'd been eating the manuscripts of some of my plays. So this is the culprit.
I want to say to everybody, this dog is not available on Amazon. So I guess we better move on to the next one, which is another book on a similar theme. I think this was the one you were probably reaching for.
Yeah.
Ancient Secret of the Fountain of Youth by Peter Kelder and Bernie S. Siegel.
Yes. So again, this goes along with the theme of my book about unlimited energy now. So if you are tired, there are 5 Tibetan rites, R-I-T-E-S, which are yoga-like exercises that if you do them every day will help rebuild your energy. And I've had clients totally exhausted. They start doing the Tibetan rites every day, and within 3 months, I'm not making this up, they're doing Olympic weightlifting. Oh. There's a very sweet little story in here about a man who went to India, and when he came back, nobody recognized him. So anyway, I remember years ago in my 30s, I was studying acupressure, and these older ladies, they said, oh, you need to do these exercises. And they showed me, and I was like, what? So what? I've done yoga. Then you start doing these exercises. If I was on a desert island and I could only do 5 exercises every day, this would be what I would do. So
if somebody's interested in like reducing the effects of aging, should they start with this book or start with the previous book? Which one would you say, or both at the same time?
That is a great question. Honestly, I think that any of the books that I'm talking about today are books. Again, I'm a master healer, 28 years experience in natural healing, and the books that I'm showing you are books that will work to help you have incredible health. So I just would say start where you're intuitively guided.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next book, which is The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Yeah, and this book is not necessarily anything about health per se. Yeah. It's about human nature and about personal power. I happen to love this book. I think it's definitely a best-selling book, national bestseller. But I love the way it's written, because if you look at it, he has sort of stories you'll be reading about a law. Here's law number 10, infection, avoid the unhappy and unlucky. And he'll be talking about a concept, and then he'll have little stories about, in ancient China, these people did this, or in France in 1562, this is what happened. So he has anecdotal stories from history that illustrate his laws of power, the 48 laws of power. It's a really fascinating read and will help you access your own personal power. And it's really well written.
Yeah. So, I mean, in your own books, have you taken any of the lessons in terms of storytelling from books like this? Or
absolutely.
Would you say you've got your own personal style of writing, or did you just try and tell people like what you've learned?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim, because I'm writing nonfiction. Yeah. But if you just tell people, do this, do that, it doesn't actually work. You have to start by telling a story, and there's this person, and they did this, and they're, so I include stories about actual people in all the books that I write. And the other thing, as you asked me about my personal style, I went to school in England, and when I was there, I started collecting quotes. So I would, you find this pithy little saying by somebody who, I said that, Bob Dylan. And so I would collect pithy sayings, and in all of my books, I'll have a quote by a famous person that encapsulates what I'm talking about. And so I've got the quote, and then I tell stories, and then I give you the facts, and then hopefully somehow it sinks in and you can apply it to your real life.
Okay, let's move on to the next book, which has got a long title, The World's Healthiest Foods, Essential Guide for the Healthiest Way of Eating by George Magellan.
Yeah, and his name, and again, a lot of these authors have difficult names. Don't feel bad. The reason I know his name and how to pronounce it is that I interviewed him once on my radio show.
Oh.
His name, the last name sounds like Italian, Metallian, but the way it's spelled is, it looks like Madeljan, Mateljan. But this gentleman, he was the owner of an organic food company. And then, unfortunately, with nutrition, a lot of people treat it more like a religion than a science.
Yeah.
And so he spent 10 years scientifically researching what exactly are the healthiest foods in the world.
Yeah.
And so, for example, here's a big hint: spinach. Eat your spinach. Yeah. Very, very healthy. And lots of people, again, say, oh, you need to be a vegetarian and so on. Well, grass-fed beef has more nutrition in it than chicken or turkey. So when you really want to understand nutrition, this is an incredible book to read. And it goes into
how big is that book? Are you holding it very close, or is it just
exactly? It goes into the nutrients in each food, so it'll break down, the vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals that are in the food. So it will help you understand, why salmon is great, why strawberries are great, and I tell people, if most of your diet comes from, if 80 to 90% of your diet comes from these world healthiest foods, even if you throw in a little bit of gummy bears like I do, you end up being pretty healthy. So and again, this is science. So really will really help motivate you and help you really understand why certain foods are incredibly healthy for you.
Okay, so we get on to the final book, which I arbitrarily picked. I don't think there's any. Can you justify me a reason why this is the last book? Why did I intuitively pick this as the last book?
Well, Banish the Blues. Now, this is a book about how to heal depression without drugs.
Yeah.
Another really important subject, just like the book about how to get out of pain naturally without drugs. When I wrote this book, well, first of all, my very first book was about how to heal depression without drugs. It was a best-selling book of the original publisher, and then everything changed. So this is the updated version of that book, Banish the Blues.
Okay.
And by the way, FYI, this is my orchid.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and my garden. So, but in the US at the time that I wrote this, over 12% of US adults over the age of 12 are on some form of psychiatric medication. And unfortunately, all the drugs have serious side effects. So again, this is about what you can do about how to be happy naturally and how to avoid the side effects of the medications. There was even just some new scientific research coming out of England where they were talking about the problems with all the psychiatric drugs. And one of the problems of this antidepressants is actually increased risk for suicide. So, an increased risk of violence. So we as a society really do need to look for and embrace more natural ways of solving things. And, part of the reason I wrote this is that I have so many clients, they're on all the antidepressants and they're still depressed. Yeah. So it's like, okay, what else do we need to do here? And it has in here also information about medical conditions that cause depression. And one of the big ones is, believe it or not, amino acid deficiency. And you can balance your brain chemistry naturally with amino acids. So there's some really good information here, and hopefully it'll be a great service to people everywhere.
Okay, right. And we have one more item to talk about. I've just got to work out how I can bring this up. I installed Windows. Oh no, I didn't want to click on that. I installed Windows 11 foolishly, and it causes me strange issues and not being able to click particular parts of the screen.
Well, I know what it is, and do you want me to start talking about it?
Hang on, give me a second. And yes, it's your dream pick, which is a women's high-waisted pattern leggings from colorful koala.
Yeah.
So why did you pick this? Like, it's like everybody, well, the exception of Christina Adams, who was a guest, and she picked a MacBook Pro, but everybody else has gone for lower value items. As like because the idea of this segment is to have, like, if you could get anything from the entire Amazon store, what would you pick? And this is what you went for. So
I know. Well, exactly. I mean, okay, if you're out there and you want to send me something, send me some emerald earrings. I'll accept them. But again, I like helping people. And, during the pandemic, so many of us are at home and wearing yoga leggings. I'm 62. I teach yoga 8 times a week. I consider myself a yoga legging snob. Yeah. I refuse to pay $90 for Lululemon leggings. And this brand, Colorful Koala, they're so comfortable. I have them in almost every color and almost every pattern. And I usually get 2 pairs of each because I'm wearing so many leggings. So again, if you like yoga leggings and you're wanting to expand your wardrobe, I love dressing up. And so, and because I'm exercising so much, I'm changing clothes frequently. So I may literally change clothes like 2 or 3, or sometimes even 4 times a day, depending on how much I'm sweating. So these are very practical. You can wash them. They last a very long time, super comfortable and figure flattering. What else can I say? They're the ultimate yoga leggings.
I think you should just rebrand as a yoga leggings saleswoman.
Exactly.
I think that's your. Let's clear that out and hopefully flip to the right one. There we go again. So we've got a few minutes left. I'd like to try and stretch this out to the hour. For some reason, Amazon say, oh, you try and make your broadcast last an hour. I don't know why. I don't know if they've got some sort of weird campaign to run it out. But I'll ask you some questions I asked Debbie Young earlier, which not the same about her books. Don't worry, I'm not going to quiz you about her books. But what would you say is your favorite book that you've written?
Oh, people ask me that, and I would actually have to say it's Reading the Soul. It's my 10th book. Yeah. And I think what I did really well in that book was I included a lot of stories about people who were struggling, and when they understood what was happening with them at the soul level, then kind of everything came together. And I related what's happening with you on the soul level with what's happening with your health. Because in my view, as a medical intuitive healer, whenever you have a dis-ease or illness, it's always happening on all 5 levels, on the physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And the soul level is the most powerful level for you to work on. And when you take the time to nurture your soul and understand what it is that your soul is here doing, then you can resolve many issues at super, super deep levels.
Okay. And what would you, what was the hardest book for you to write? I mean, like, both from a personal level and just like, well, I kind of know the hardest book to write in a way, but like, what was the hardest book to write from a personal level and just in terms of writing it?
Yeah, well, I'll laugh about this. Remember, I said that my guidance told me to write the little book of breath work.
Yeah.
And my intellect, I'm like everybody else, even though I'm a professional intuitive, I have an ego. My mind was like, what? You want me to do what? Are you sure? So anyway, that book, I worked with a photographer in Savannah, and we took photographs of the hand mudras. So for example, this is a hand mudra. This is a hand mudra. And I had, I remember when I was working on the book, there were 70 different black and white photographs of me in black tights, a white shirt, doing different things with my hands. And I was like, what was I thinking? And I had to, the photographer didn't know what they were. So I was like peering into the screen going, this is this mudra, that's the other mudra. And sorting it all out. It was really quite challenging.
Yeah. Okay. And to finish off, we won't go to the hour, but let's talk about the future. Have you got any books planned that you're going to write in the next year? Or any book ideas even?
Yes. Like every author, I'm always like, what's the next book? What's the next book? And I'm very funny because I prefer to read nonfiction over fiction. And I'm always intently focused on what I'm going to write next. And I've had some ideas and I kind of got started. But as you know, you really have to have major passion for something in order to write another book. And I was really hoping that I would be getting going again in September of this year. I think I, like everybody else, when the pandemic hit, it was just, like, oh my gosh, life just seemed to reorganize. But the bottom line is, I don't know. And if you're out there listening and there's something you want me to write about, drop me an email. Say, Catherine, please write about this. So because last year in 2020, I spent the entire year writing articles and creating videos to help people get through the pandemic. And so if you look at the volume of what I wrote, in terms of thousands of words, I'm sure I wrote the equivalent of another book. Maybe I should put that into a book, but I created that material both in terms of articles and videos, but I didn't publish it all together as a book.
Yeah, I was saying this probably off camera the other day, and we were interviewing somebody on a thing, and the whole point was there's so many non-fiction books where somebody has basically one chapter and they've stretched it out. So maybe each one of those blog posts you could stretch out into a book. I think it's a little bit, well, it's not. I mean, it happens a lot, but I've read a lot of non-fiction books where the first chapter tells you what the book's about, and then they just tell you again, and then they tell you again, and tell you again, and tell you again.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with having basically a book full of blog posts. I know people have done it, but it's not a good
technique. No.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully it's towards the end, so the Amazon censors might not notice. But how can people find out and get in contact with you if they want to talk to you about book ideas or any of the books or any of the book recommendations?
CatherineCarrigan.com, and my second website is unlimitedenergynow.com.
Okay. Well, it's been great to have you on on the show. And
also my Amazon Author Central page. You can follow me on my Amazon Author Central page. Yeah.
Well, anybody who's watching live, you can click down onto any of the books that I've got a little book of breathwork uppers thing. And if you click through to that and then click on Catherine's name on the book page, that will take you to her Amazon author page, which shows all the books in fantastic Technicolor or yoga. Was it colorful koala?
The leggings.
Whatever. Yeah, Technicolor.
Go get, if you like yoga or you like just lounging around the house, go get yourself some really fabulous leggings.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been great to have you on the show, and I'm going to try and remember how I have to end this now. I think I have to end this on Amazon first, then here. So I'm going to put up the screen, and hopefully it will all finish. So thanks for everybody who's been watching. I know there have been people watching. Nobody's commented, but there have been steadily people watching. People like, it's always interesting, some of the books people liked and then some people didn't. So it's interesting. Anyway, thanks for everybody's watching, and thanks so much for being the guest, Catherine.
Thanks to everybody. Read more books.